1879 BC, 20:16 AM. After 5 full years passed after Sodom and Gomorrah rebelled against Elam, the king of Babylon waited no longer. Nimrod believed that Elam's silence indicated weakness, for Chedorlaomer did nothing to punish the Sodomites. In this year, Nimrod assembles a truly vast host of Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, Hurrians, Aramaeans, Amorites, Hittites, as well as a formidable contingent of giants of Rephaim and Anakim stock. Nimrod marched his army toward Elam on his way to the most famous battle of the ancient world, known as the Battle of Kuruksata. In his host was a nephew called Tidal in Genesis 14, but Tudul of the Hittites. Another king was Arioch, a son of Nimrod, who reigned over Sumer, as well as Mardon, a detested son of Nimrod, even despised by Semiramis, the queen. Mardon was truly gigantic. Remember, his mother was Semiramis, the tall daughter of Noah, and bloodthirsty. Mardon is remembered by the Greco-Roman world as Ares, Mars, the violent god of war, who was in the Babylonian annals called Martu. Chedorlaomer met Nimrod's army with an inferior force of 5,000 men, outnumbered by Nimrod 7-11. The start of the Battle of Kuruksata in the Mahabharata is the first recorded instance of a famous Bronze Age institution known as the Heroic Code. Before the terrible battle commenced, both sides watched numerous single combats between renowned warriors. The 13 years preceding the battle is mentioned about a dozen times throughout the Mahabharata text. The Elamites slaughter the armies of Nimrod, and this war saw the end of several famous giants. Mardon was killed. In humiliation, Nimrod, Arioch, and Tidal are subjected to Elamite rule, and children are taken as security. Babylonia garrisoned with Elamite troops. Chedorlaomer becomes overlord of the Euphrates-Tigris basin. Scholars have linked the lord of Arata to Harappa, the Indus Valley cities. The Battle of Kuruksata was over the right to the fossil fuel products of Canaan, for it was Nimrod's intent to defeat the Elamites and then secure his dominion westward into Canaan to the cities of the plain. This battle occurred in the year 2016 Annus Mundi, or 1008 plus 1008 years, and it was 2160 years, 1080 times 2, since Earth had assumed its present orbit around the Sun. The Elamites were early peoples of India, and in the Indian Vedic timeline we see this as 1224. This was 360 years after the deluge. This was the 68th year of Abram's life. 1. Mahabharata. 3. The Wars of Gods and Men. A Queen Am I. Sitchin, a letter from Hammurabi. 1877 BC, 2018 AM. Abram leaves Haran among the Hurrians, his kin, and follows the instructions of God to go to Canaan. In Canaan, the future land of Israel, Abram's name is changed to Abraham, and he enters a covenant with God. God promises him that his seed shall become mighty nations and spread across the face of the earth, his descendants more than the stars for multitude. He is told that through his descendants all the nations of the world will be blessed. His progeny will first be slaves in Egypt, but will later come out of bondage with great wealth. In biblical chronology, the Abrahamic covenant is instituted 430 years before the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt in 1447 BC. The date of 1447 BC for the exodus is well proven. Eusebius, in his Chronicon, also counted the 430 years from the promises made to Abraham to the exodus. The story of the promises is in Genesis and Jasher. The fulfillment of these promises has totally eluded modern Christians. Today it is taught that this covenant is fulfilled by the re-emergence of the tiny nation-state of Israel in Palestine. But the nation of modern Israel has not at all fulfilled any of these conditions. The descendants of Abraham have literally filled the earth today, and who they are and what they have done to bless the nations will be fully disclosed in this research. Abraham is 70 years old. 1. Augustine, City of God. 2. Genesis. Jasher. 1872 BC, 20:23 a.m. Abraham is a very powerful man by this time, with an extensive house. He and his nephew Lot separate, their flocks and herds too large for any one area to support them. Lot chooses to dwell in the plain of Sodom, a lush valley, and Abraham returns to Canaan after 5 years in Egypt. In Canaan he finds famine, so he went to Egypt. He is 75 years old and dwells again in Canaan. Chedorlaomer brings his army of Elamites into Babylonia and summons the armies of Nimrod, Amraphel, Arioch or Sumer, and Akkad and Tidal of Anatolia. This massive host passes over into Syria and south into the land of the giants called Bashan and Argob, vanquishing the giants called Emims, Zuzims, and Zamzumins, giants living in Canaan. The Elamite Confederation then crushes the Amorites on the way towards Sodom and Gomorrah. The attack from the north left the Sodomites and Gomorrites defenceless, and their armies were routed and chased off into the lime pits bordering the Salt Sea. The invasion route was down the King's Highway, a famous road in antiquity. Sodom and Gomorrah are sacked, the women and children taken with many of the people and their herds and livestock. Among the captives was Lot, nephew of Abraham. The Elamite Confederation camps near Damascus, close to the famous pre-flood foundation of megalithic blocks called Baalbek. The ancient stone tablets called the Chedorlaomer texts confirm the Genesis account, for all of the participants of the Elamite Confederation are named and the route they took, invading Canaan, is specifically given. This invasion was due to a rebellion that occurred 13 years earlier. Abraham discovers the matter and summons his allies, 318 Anakim giants, the sons of Noah and 3 Amorite chieftains with their forces, and the combined groups form an army led by Abraham that falls upon the drunk and celebrating Elamite Confederation outside Damascus. The small forces slay thousands, sending men panicking into the wilderness, as the kings Chedorlaomer, Tidal, and Arioch are captured and put to the sword. Nimrod, Amraphel, escapes, his own deliverance foretold to him in a prophecy the same night he dreamed that his death would come to him by the seed of Abraham. The death and defeat of Chedorlaomer is evidenced in the thousands of years old letter from Hammurabi, where we read a demand from Hammurabi for the return of temple virgins taken priorly by Chedorlaomer. This demand could never have been made had not Chedorlaomer first forcibly taken them to Elam before losing power to Babylon. Sodom and the cities of the plain are given back their possessions and people, and this begins 24 years of prosperity and isolationism. The Sodomites and their Canaanite neighbours grow famously rich, and their prosperity results in a degeneration into hedonism and public demonstrations of torture of foreigners and locals caught helping them. With unlimited resources from their proceeds from the mineral harvesting from the Salt Sea, they still refuse to feed the poor or clothe them, give strangers lodging, food or water, and they became a byword among the nations for their highway piracy, the rich taking from the poor. Abraham meets with Shem, who is 465 years old and called Melchizedek, a high priest in Canaan. Nimrod, free of Elamite dominion, secures his reign over his kingdom. At this time, Amorites from Mitanni are populating his dominions. 1. Genesis. 2. The wars of gods and men, Abraham, the fateful years, Sichin. 3. Genesis, Jasher. 4. The wars of gods and men, Abraham, the fateful years, Sichin.